Oh, Today we are here to celebrate our ʻea. In this time of Hawaiian sovereignty restoration and the great awakening of our people, the rising up from all corners of the earth, this consciousness of our independence, this consciousness of justice, this consciousness of our humanity. We are here today to celebrate our ʻea, our independence. This program is meant to inspire, to educate, to enlighten our Kāne, our wahine, our kupuna, our keiki that have yet to come. This conversation today about how we gird our independence, how we reclaim who we are, who we've always been, is an important thread in the reclamation project of our Lā Hoʻihoʻi. Today we are here to celebrate Lā Hoʻihoʻi Ea on July 31st, 1843. Kaulukui Keoli, Kamehameha Ekolu, accomplished the great feat for the Hawaiian kingdom. We became a nation state, and in so doing, Kaulukui Keoli, Kamehameha Ekolu had to deal with imperial threats from several different nations. And on July 31st, 1843, Kaulukui Keoli, in an act of righteousness, after a 5-month prolonged occupation by the British Crown, ʻea, independence, was restored, was returned to our people. And we celebrated by the thousands. For years and years, we celebrated our ʻea. And today, the threads of many generations here who have laid the pathway before us, we are here to reclaim and to celebrate yet again that we have not been suffocated. We have not been asphyxiated. That our breath lives. Our kingdom lives. And so today, Lā Hoʻihoʻi Ea and the celebration happening throughout the month, which culminates on the 31st, our Independence Day, our Liberation Day, it is important that we come together as a Lā Hoʻihoʻi and make accessible the dialogue and discussion that is necessary to bind our people yet again, to repair the breach in the wall. And so today we are joined by very important niho, very important papale, haka haka, ili ilis, all shapes and sizes here represented, to engage in a very important discussion for our people. This is not just a discussion for men, it's a discussion for our fathers. It's a discussion for our mothers who raise keiki Kāne. We're here today because I'm a father. And as a father, practicing and reclaiming Hawaiian identity, Hawaiian cultural practice and philosophy and theory and action most of all, I was put in a situation to hume my son and give him his first malo in the celebration and dedication to the Lono season. And in this very interesting predicament, I was able to turn to several people in this circle here today for inspiration, for guidance. And in so doing, I was able to reclaim a piece of our sacredness, a piece of our ea. And I was inspired by this. The ho'ailona that filled the skies that day inspired me to share. And so today, I hope that in the spirit of sharing, in the spirit of ho'olu, in the spirit of mahi, of cultivation of our people, I hope that some of the stories that we get to hear today likewise inspire you. To all of you listening in all corners of the world, those of us Kanaka who have been cast into the winds by your own decision or otherwise, our intention is to bring this ea to you. To the mothers who raise sons, to the grandparents who have that responsibility, for those of us Kāne still lost and looking for direction and reflexivity and accountability, we hope that this discussion brings ea to you. I'm very happy on behalf of Lā Hoʻihoʻi Ea, the celebration of Hawaiian restoration, sovereignty, to be able to introduce our two moderators for today. Two people that I rely on quite a bit when it comes to information, when it comes to thought provocation in the Hawaiian realm. And they're here today to introduce some of our esteemed guests. And so I want to turn it over to them because I'm very thirsty, I'm very honored for the vai ava that is going to be served this evening. And so I come with great humility, I come with great respect, and we bring into the circle all of our kupunas who have passed. We want to bring into the circle our brother Kealoha. We want to bring into the circle Anakala Eddie, Uncle Jerry, and all of the kupuna who have modeled for us what it is to seek pono. With that, ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono, the life, the sovereignty, the rule of our people is in our hands, and it is with that level of accountability and responsibility, that kuleana, that burden, that privilege, that we accept our roles in the change that we need to make in our society, in the change that we need to make for one another. So, thank you everybody for joining us here tonight for this important conversation, this dialogue on hume malo, the reclamation of who we are as Kāne. Tonight I want to introduce Dr. Kaliko Baker as well as Dr. Kawika Tengan, who will be leading us through tonight's presentation, our forum. I want to thank OEV TV for being here and making this broadcast available for Kanaka around the world, and for allies who are seeking better understanding and more accountability. Thank you to Waiwai Collective, all of their staff for making this space available. Thank you for all the brothers here for being here tonight and for sharing your story going forward. Without further ado, I want to pass the microphone over to our two moderators tonight. Let's start off with Dr. Kaliko Baker.
Pelina ke aloha, mai ka lā puka I hae ai kona mole olu o le hua. Mai kahi kihi o ko kako aina nei o ahu nei ai ke kahi kihi. Ke aloha nui ia o koa pau, ka poe I o ako koa mai ma nei, aloha nui o kou. Nā mea hano hano e noho nei, maluna o kia awai nei I kukuru ia no o kou, no o kou ke la, ia o kou kia kapu o ka noho ana ma o, ma muli o kou hano ana, aloha nui o kou. So I was going to say a few words about this project. Mahalo nui ia Imai for getting us together and putting the kahea out, and Kekama, who's in the background tonight, to really start this dialogue around hume malo and the importance of hume malo for male identity, masculine or male identity. But yeah, so what I wanted to talk about really real quick is this, the notion of identity and how it connects to how we present ourselves. And malo is indeed a presentation of being a Kanaka male. I don't know of a more quintessential sort of article of clothing than a malo that would show whether show that a Hawaiian male is trying to present his Hawaiian maleness. Unfortunately, I didn't. Well, fortunately, perhaps for you guys watching and you guys here, I did not hume a malo this evening. COVID has got the best of this kino, as well as this strong right hand. But yeah, but you know, I chose to wear this shirt. This shirt has Olelo Hawaii all over it. Made by one Kanaka, for Kanaka to wear. So this is a presentation of identity. Because one thing that's big for us is Olelo Hawaii. And I'd like to just say that, so when we talk about these things this evening, just keep that in our consciousness, the importance of these discussions around Kanaka identity. And with that, nui loa na mana'o hapai ia na kiahiahi. So plenty of thoughts put up this evening. So I'm going to pass it over to Kawika. And Kawika, Dr. Tengan will take us through the introductions of our esteemed panel.
Velina mai, me ke aloha ia kako apau, na Kāne hume malo, makaukau I ka hana nui a kako he Lā Hui. Mahalo to all of you Kāne who have gathered and answered the call, and all those others who are really here to gain the ike that, in particular, the kupuna we've invited to share can offer us. I wanted to mahalo especially Kekama and Imai for prompting this dialogue. The end goal here is to have a collection of short kind of malo story videos that could perhaps become a documentary that Kekama would work on. And for any Kāne out there watching, this is also a kahea to you. After you hear the mo'olelo tonight, if you're inspired, please share your malo story, your Malo Mana-logue. And the mana in here, M-A-N-A, is really about increasing our collective mana as a Lā Hui through the dialogue that we're having. And I'll mention this again later, but before I forget, the email address to send your interest, your story to would be makavalufilms@gmail.com, and that'll be the Kekama who will get that. The olelo I opened up with when we drank our ʻawa, ʻeala, e hoa I ka malo, is an olelo no ʻea that says, get up and gird your loincloth, a call to rise and get to work. So, without further ado, I'd like to get to our esteemed kupuna here, as well as on Moloka Inui Ahina, who have joined us. We have Noah Emmett Aluli, Umi Kai, Kukona Lopes, and Thomas Ka'awai Kulukukui Jr. And they'll speak in that order. So I'll just do the intros as each one talks, and I'll first introduce Emmett. So Noah Emmett Aluli lives on Molokai and is the medical executive director of the Molokai General Hospital. He has had a family medical practice at the Molokai Family Health Center since 1976. Emmett founded Napu'uwai Inc., a private, nonprofit, charitable, and educational corporation dedicated to the betterment of health conditions of Native Hawaiians. Emmett is a founding board member of ʻAhui o nā Kauka, the Native Hawaiian Physicians Association, and is an assistant medical professor at the University of Hawaii John A. Burns School of Medicine. Emmett is also chairperson of the Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission, a founding member of Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana, and co-founder of the Pele Defense Fund. He is a board member of the San Francisco-based Tide Center and Network, and he was also part of the Kaho'olawe 9 that first landed on Kanaloa and stood up to the Navy in 1976. We've asked all of our panelists to contemplate the questions, why do you wear a malo? Share a meaningful malo memory, and what does malo have to do with Ea and Lā Hoʻihoʻi Ea? So to kick us off, mahalo, and please join me in welcoming Emmett.
Sitting on my balcony on Molokai, Pu'ukapeli. The background is our Mauna Loa, feeling the winds of the hurricane, not named yet, coming in. Mahalo for the opportunity to kuka on Umi Malo. Just some quick thoughts. When I was in high school, a junior, senior in 1961, 62, I was asked to kind of like be in a play, a John Cholo play in which I had to wear a malo. Although I was kind of like a swimmer and used to the swimming shorts, the skivvies, nobody else in my generation or previous generations had a malo. I said, cannot do that. And then in my senior year, I was a Aloha Prince and Sergeant and Anna Kanamoku were not being dressed traditionally, and so a malo was out of it. But the tying of the malo happened in 1980 when we, as an ohana, were directed by Anthony Edith Kanakaʻoli in order to access Ko'olawe for religious purposes. We would establish and continue a makahiki ceremony. So in preparation for the first access, the Edith Kanakaʻoli Foundation, not yet formed, but Nalani Kanakaʻoli and Halau Okekuhi came to Ko'olawe to kind of like teach us the protocol and the chants and tied our malo. About like a couple dozen of us, because none of us has ever tied or wore a malo. And then in this wearing or exhibiting or performing a malo, in a malo, came a lot of mana for me. It was not just how we looked, but how we dressed and how we concentrated and how we kind of like chanted Tūlono, requesting that he come to the island, Kanaloa, and to bring his makahiki rains to green the island, to raise the water table, and to move forward so that we could continue those ceremonies. So it was a ceremonial thing. Got on Zoom. But anyway, I just want to say that being so proud to wear a malo in ceremonies, to bring that mana of our ancestral gods back to us, to incorporate those important opportunities for us to continue that relationship, that communication, that reconnection to our gods is so more important than anything else. That makes me and all of us so proud to be able to kind of do that together. Anyway, my manao, my mahalo, ahuiho.
Mahalo e Emmett. Next, We have Gordon Umialiloa Lahana o Kalakaua King Kai, or Umi, as his friends call him, who crafted his first Hawaiian weapon when he was 19. Made from the wood of a mango tree and ringed with shark teeth, his first leo mano, or lay of the shark, is still with him. So too are all his other first attempts. They remind me of my mistakes, so I won't make them again, says Umi. Umi is not the only artist in the family. Janice Leinaala Noveo Kai, his wife of 42 years, and this might have been old, I'm not sure what the number is now, is a skilled weaver with over 45 years of experience learning about and crafting na mea Hawai'i, including na mea kaua, things of war. Umi and Janice are part of a small group of native Hawaiian artists trying to perpetuate the craft of making tools and weapons that were once essential to survival. He is a 2018 Living Treasure of Hawaii, 2019 Living Treasure of the Hawaiian People, and also awardee of the 2019 Dukes Waikiki Ho'okahiko Award. Please join me in welcoming Umi.
Mahalo and aloha. Everybody make me nervous. Such a esteemed group I'm sitting in front of, as well as sitting next to. I think one of the biggest questions was, when was my first experience wearing a malo? And happened in 1969 on a trip to the continent with some serenaders of Hawaiian nature, headed up by Kahawanu Lake and Maikeaiu Lake. And I didn't realize that I was being asked to go as a dancer following George Helm and Walter Kawaiʻaia to be the pageant person to walk down the stage area in a malo. And when they said I was going to wear a cape, I thought, oh great, I'll have a cape on. I didn't realize the cape was a half cape. It was only up to the back, half of my back. And it was no flap in the back, as Mikey and Kahawanu had specified. And so that experience enlightened me, enlightened the audience as well. But it was a good experience. It was the first time that I felt more Hawaiian. In the dance with the halau, you learned about Hawaiian, but when I put that malo on, for some reason, I felt like a real Hawaiian and a real Kāne for the first time. And so it awakened me. And George and Walter felt the same way. Then another experience was later on, some 20 years later, teaching Lua practitioners about Lua. And during one of the graduations, I asked everyone if they knew how to wear a malo, because during the graduation, everybody had to wear a malo. Get out of your shorts, get out of your black t-shirt, you're going to wear a malo. Everybody nodded yes. So we're sitting down waiting for everybody to come back after changing, and one proud Hawaiian came walking by, and the wind blew, and the front flap went up, and there was nothing under between the legs. So the warning there is never take anything for granted. Make sure that everybody understands, and you need to demonstrate how it's properly worn, even though they say they know how to wear it. Again, it made everybody proud that they knew how to wear it, and made him feel a little shameful that he didn't know how, but he laughed about it, which was good, and we taught him the correct way. Those are my experiences, and it's a means of telling you that it brought manhood and Hawaiianness at the same time into my life, into going to the Marquesas and walking around in Malo, into the villages and such with our pa. On the ship, we were always wearing malos as well. So it was a very good experience. When Kawika asked me to come and talk and and how it relates to ea. I looked up the word ea just to make sure that I was going to be speaking correctly, because I often don't. But not only does it mean the sovereignty, as Imai was elaborating on, and but there are other meanings as well that I associate in wearing the malo. For me, the sovereignty and wearing a malo is synonymous. It identifies you with your culture. Another meaning, or the second meaning, is life, and Imai had mentioned the breath, and the malo does that too. It instills this life into you, and it makes you speak louder. It makes you stand taller. I think the malo is a good means of breathing life into you. It also means to rise, and it also not only to rise up emotionally or culturally, but it also means to get an erection. So that's a good one too for wearing that malo. And cool, yeah. And the last one, the last meaning of I found in there was smell, to smell, and ea pilau. For me, that meaning rings home in wearing the malo and remembering what happened during the overthrow, and all of the wrongdoings, and the pilau smell that all of this bashing of Hawaiians and bashing of the Hawaiian culture brings to us. So that's the malo for me. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Umi. Our next speaker, a 1972 graduate of Kamehameha Schools, Kukona Lopes, served in the Air Force before becoming an air traffic controller, a position from which he is now retired. Along with his wahine makanani, Kukona leads the Kekahua o Kuali'i, a nonprofit on Kauai Nui Marsh that hosts community and educational programs supporting the perpetuation of traditional Hawaiian cultural practice and mālama. He is also a po'o of the mo'oku in the Halemua o Kuali'i, and he participated in the special delegation that brought home and returned the 2 ku images residing in London and Salem as part of the 2010 E Ku Anakapaya exhibit at the Bishop Museum. He is an accomplished carver who also teaches all who seek his mentorship. Kukona.
Mahalo Ke'akua for bringing us all here safely. Mahalo to the organizers for this special gathering. Really appreciate it. My experience with malo is rather recent, in comparison to Umi and a lot of people that are here. I didn't start wearing a malo until 1999. When I say we, when my generation grew up, Kamehameha Schools, it was always geared towards education, geared towards college prep. They were trying to make good citizens of us, and the influence was more in education rather than culture. So for me, malo was something I saw in pictures. It wasn't until I became involved with the Halemua on Maui that we went to Pu'ukohola, and that was the first time I ever put on a malo. And back then, you didn't want to show that you didn't know how to do a malo, because they would help you and they would make sure it's on there snug. So I made sure that I watched and tried to get pointers that way, and I tied my malo on as best I could, and for me, fortunate that it stayed on. And ever since then, whenever I do put on a malo, it's a connection. I connect back to my ancestors, and my kupuna. And even though I never saw my grandfather wear a malo, my dad didn't wear a malo, my uncles never wore a malo, to me, I still feel connected when I put a malo on and I step in mud and I'm walking around. And I want to make sure that when my keiki is grown up enough, long enough, or old enough to wean himself away from his mom, that he comes to me and asks me to help him put on his malo, his first malo, because that's my kuleana. And I have one story to share about a malo moment. It was early 2005, something like that. We were doing a ceremony, and one of the brothers that was a lave for us. This was his first time with a malo on, and he didn't know how to tie a malo, but he said, yeah, I get him. I wing him, do the best I can. And so while he was serving the ʻaha, we noticed like, wow, brother's kind of loose over there. But he didn't care. In his mind, in his heart, in his head, he was in the right space, and it didn't matter that his malo was flapping and that everything else was flapping. He was content and comfortable with where he was. And I think that's the mindset we gotta promote for a lot of the younger people that are hesitant to wear malo. It's just, this is who you are. You're Hawaiian. It doesn't matter if you never worn a malo. This is who we are. So mahalo nui. Mahalo.
And to close off our esteemed panel, born in 1945, Thomas Kauai Kaulukukui Jr. is a graduate of Kamehameha Schools in 1963, Michigan State University, 1967, and the William Richardson School of Law at the University of Hawaii in 1977. He was drafted into the Army in 1968 and served in Vietnam from 1969 to 1970 as a platoon sergeant in the 173rd Airborne Brigade. He entered private practice in 1978 and was appointed a trial judge in 1988. In 1993, he relinquished his judgeship in order to serve the Hawaiian people on numerous boards and commissions, including his present position as a trustee of the Queen Lili'uokalani Trust that serves orphan and destitute Hawaiian children. He is a capable orator, an active teacher of leadership, as well as Taekwondo and Aikido, and an olohelua. Join me in welcoming Ka'oi.
Ano ae kaku, greetings to all. Offer my respect to the Great Spirit who has made this day and given us a humble but important part in it. And also all respect to our sacred land, the land that spawned us, the land to which we will return when our life is over. All respect to the memory of our great kings and queens who have left their legacies to benefit us. Respect also to the leaders of our community, those leaders who are here, our elders who have passed on and who now sleep the long summers and winters too, our elders who yet guide us with their wisdom, if we are wise enough to listen to them. To all others within sound of my voice, whether you hail from the east at the place that our ancestors called Tahiti Ku, or you hail from the west at the place that they called Tahiti Moe, or anywhere in between. Aloha to you all. I'm pleased to be able to share the time with you tonight. Actually, I was bored at home watching TV and documentaries, and I thought I could get out of the house for once. So, okay. And that's the small reason I came. The bigger reason was I thought when I saw Malo Mana, the two things that jumped into my head were malo as menswear and malo as metaphor. As has been mentioned before, malo is a uniquely cultural article of dress, but I'm kind of simplistic, so my discussion of malo of menswear goes like this. To answer the question, do I wear a malo at home? I do not. I wear my cotton rice bag shorts. And I wear it really for the same reason that our Hawaiian ancestors wore malos as menswear, to cover my bolos and my hang down. That's what they wore it for. Can you imagine that they would fast forward 300 years in the future and think that there would actually be a discussion on malo as having metaphorical references to sovereignty? Back then, probably not. They tied on the malo and they went to work. They did what they had to do. But there's a lesson in that in itself. I watched a documentary a few years ago of an Iraq veteran. He had PTSD. He took a trip with somebody and they did a hiking trip to New York. And over the campfire, they'd talk about things that were of interest to them, 3 men. And the question came up, what is a man? What, in your opinion, they asked him, is a man? And I liked his answer. His answer was, a man is someone, a male who understands what his responsibility is to himself, his family, and his community, and he just freaking does it. He didn't say freaking. He used the other F word. But I thought, how much more simpler can that be? You tie in your malo, you understand what your responsibility is, and you just freaking do it. Okay? So that's a lesson, kind of malo as real menswear for me. Now, I do and I have worn a malo, and I didn't start till I was in my 40s. I was a judge from 1988 to 1993. Imagine that. State court judge, sitting on high, literally, dressed in black robes. And then at the end of my service, I went to the first Lua class. Umi and I are the graduate of the first renewed Lua class around 1993. And at that point in time, we were engaged in cultural events which required us to wear a malo. You know what my first thought was? Does a state court judge wear a malo? Has a state court judge ever worn a malo? Was my question. But the cultural question, or the cultural imperative, was much bigger than whether I was a judge or somebody else. So I tied on a malo. You know. Actually, now that I think of it, I should have worn a malo under the robes for one of those trials. Right? But you don't think of these things until a long time later. Right? So I tied on the malo, and it was as uplifting and educational for me as it was for anyone. And with our pa, with Umi, I've worn a malo as I did ʻaha on an ancient Marquesan marae, where probably no one had set foot before, or at Tapu Tapu Atea, the sacred marae in Tahiti, or many times in Aotearoa, for many different things and on many events where we served, our pa served as kiai, especially during protocol events. There's one time we tied on a malo that was kind of special, and I'll tell you why. The event was we had acted as kiai at the tomb of King William Charles Honolulu, because there's going to be a ceremony the next day to rededicate the tomb and to rededicate a kahili that was made specially for him. So some of us spent the night there. And as I remember in that number were Kamana Opono Crab, Kiawika Holokula, my cousin Charles Sonny Kaulukukui, and myself. There may have been one other. So we spent the night there, and in preparation for the events in the morning, we all tied on our malo. It was early in the morning. It was quiet. It was a beautiful morning. And I remember we all stood together, but silently with our own thoughts as we tied on our malo to get ready. Right? And the reason that strikes me is what I remember about that was that the feeling of absolute confidence and competence that I had. And as I taught on my malo, not only in me, but in the others who have spent years. We had spent years together all over the Pacific. We went to Rhode Island to go pick up a spear carrier for ʻŌiha. We did many, many things together. And the thought I had on that particular occasion is that I had the same feeling as when my platoon went down to the landing zone with all our battle gear, and we were good at what we were doing. And we were ready to get on the chopper and do a combat assault someplace. And you know what? No sense of worry, no sense of trepidation or fear, absolute sense of like we were going to work. We can do this. We've done it so many times before. We are competent. We're going to do what we have to do. And on that particular occasion, that morning, for some reason, with the people I was with, that's the feeling I had. So I remember particularly tying the malo on there. I'll end with this thought in terms of the malo and sovereignty. I have long believed that whatever form of sovereignty, if it ever comes, that we seize or are bestowed upon the Hawaiians as a people, we're not going to be sovereign unless we're sovereign as individuals. We can declare tomorrow, the United States may declare tomorrow we are a sovereign nation. It will not change the statistics of which our Hawaiians are at the top of every statistic you want to be at the bottom of, and the bottom of every statistic you want to be at the top of. It will not change our health statistics. It will not change our employment. It will not change our health. It will not change our prison statistics. All of those things will change only when the individuals, all of us, achieve what I call individual sovereignty. That's education, that's employment, that's health, that's taking care of our family, that's service to ourselves, our family and community. When we achieve that as individuals, we are sovereign already. If we do not, we will never be sovereign. So for me, what the tying on the malo represents is that achievement of a male, a man, right, who understands what it needs to be and just freaking does it. Because at that point, he is sovereign. And he is the first building block, one of the many building blocks we have to move towards eventual national or popular sovereignty. You know, my mano.
E mahalo nui I nā manao I hoʻi ke ia mai nei, e nā mea hano, e kauka aluli ma Molokai nui ahina I nā oimo noko hoʻolohe mai ana mai e aloha no. Mahalo nui nā manao. So we've heard some pretty profound thoughts from our panelists this evening on malo and hume malo and what that means to them as Kanaka and presenting Kanaka and mahalo nui ko mau manao. There's manao hope on individual sovereignty. I joke around sometimes. Obviously I joked in the opening part too, but I joke around sometimes. I pull from a little bit of Forrest Gump ad. I just say, sovereign is as sovereign does. So hume malo for Kāne is one step of achieving the individual sovereignty that Judge Kaulukukui was talking about. So mahalo nui a oi, ke labo manao. And then, the malo stories, the first time wearing malo, those kinds of things. Yeah, you guys' generation, a little bit older when you had to start wearing malo. So us guys was, a little bit younger than you guys when we started wearing malo. Our kids, That's what they know. That's what they know. So Kukona, Kaukeke, yeah, that's what he gonna know. That's what he gonna know. That's what our kids know. So mahalo nui I na mana'o I ho'ike ia maila. Yeah, so we wanted to transition into showing a fellow, a Moloka'i nui a Hinan's Vikio, because one of our goals, right, is to get a series of videos, little vignettes, little poke Vikio on hume malo. So, because everybody has their malo stories, and everybody who has hume da malo, hume it has, I put the D on the end. Aloha no. Everybody who has hume malo before, yeah. So Kioke, we put out the kahea to this small group of people to make a video and send it in, and Brother Kioke was the Lone Ranger on that one. So looks like he's coming in straight hot from Kalaupapa. Was that Kioke? No, out in Maika Pahale from your guys' house. Oh yeah. I. So we're going to show this video, and and we're going to open up to the people in audience today to make a video of similar content but more personal for you guys, but also to the broader community of Kāne who are viewing this video online now, and who will view this video in the future. We can email the videos, submit to makavalu@gmail.com, and we'll hit that again later, and I'm sure it'll come up someplace in credits. And look, Kioki, that handsome man is waiting to tell his story. Nana kako ikavikio.
Hey, aloha. My name is Kioki Peskaya, and I live and I come from Molokai. I was asked to share why I wear malo. The malo is the dress of our kupuna. This is what they wore daily. And nowadays we don't wear malo every day. Malo has become more used specifically or with more intent. I still have my malo that I was married in. I have a different malo for when I do lono ceremonies. I have a different malo when I conduct ʻawa ceremony. And I have a different malo when I stand up at Pukahola with ohua kawaiʻaiʻa. I have a different malo specifically for iwi kupuna, ho'oleva. I have a malo for when I dance hula. And I have other malo that I use when I work in the mala or awana up in the kai. And so I want to show my sons that they shouldn't be ashamed of wearing malo when the time calls for it, so that they don't hesitate and they don't feel like they're different. But wearing malo evokes mana, a sense of pride for me, unity. When you get 50 other brothers with you wearing malo is impressive. You become more focused in the ceremony or the things that you do when you're wearing malo. And I just want to encourage more brothers out there, if the occasion presents itself to don and hume kamalo, I want you to be able to just, without a doubt or hesitation, because this is who we are. We are kanaka maoli, he malo, he mana, he kapu, he ea.
Yo Monica ino kaheke. And this is the kind of short vikio that we want to really get everyone to submit. And again, it's makavalufilms@gmail.com. So please do submit. We're going to open up a little to the Kāne who joined us. I did want to comment because Kilki's video reminded me about the Aina aspect of Malo. So the lei that our esteemed kupuna have, and I actually do have one for you, Emmett. It's here, but if you decided to Imai and show up, maybe I'll send it back home with Kilki then, since you'll be going back. Is made from malo, the malo ulu, which is the sheath of the malo leaf. So when this thing falls down on the ground, these are all malo. So of course, they also have ule. And there's famous olelo no eo kuka ule e kalahu, which is when the flower of the ule is standing and the breadfruit, the laho is sagging. It's the season for breadfruit, which we're in now, and we're on a ku night here. So ku also a kino lau in ulu. Thought I would honor that and that intention with the malo ulu lei or the lei malo ulu that the Kāne have. And also there's individual malo, if anybody wants to take, feel free in that umeke, as well as some ule. If you dry it up, it's mosquito punk. So with that, we want to kind of maybe call on a couple hoa here, and we'll see how the time goes if we can get to everyone. But I'd like to call on someone who helped me in my journey in hume malo, and has been, I think, a pohana for the Lā Hoʻihoʻi in a number of different ways, and was already mentioned by Kauwai. So come on, Opono Crab, could you come and share a little something? And I will disinfect this mic, as I've been told to, so give me a second. Can you have one?
Vilina mai ke roa aku yaka koa pau e nā hoa makamaka I ke ia pō. Ka mea nui ke roa aku ia o koe nā kama o ke ia aina. Mai ka ehua ka wana au I ka ipuka I kumokahi, I kahi kina, I ka wahi o kani ke au ki ei. A hike ke kokoro ana ka la I ka mole o le hua I kumohana I ka wahi o kani ke au halo. Ai ke le mau moku I ka ilila I papahana mokua kea ke aloha mai kako. Mahalo nui aku ia oi Imai I no keia huhui ana no kako apau I na Kāne, I na kama o keia aina. E ho upu I ka mana I loko no kako e pile ana ke ala I lono, e ke ala I Kāne, ke ala I kū a me kana loa. Nā mako e hahai ke la ala no ko kako mau kūpuna. E mahalo ako nui a o lua I nā po o keia huhui ana o Kaliko a me Kawika ka alakai e ke kuka ana e pile ana I ka oihana malo. A me ia o kou e nā kupuna I nā ele makua no koko manao li ke ole no kako. The reasons why Kāne no like put on malo. I tu momona. I get one Buddha opu. People can see my ass. I get one flat ass. I skinny. I wasn't brought up Hawaiian. I'm not good enough as a man. Oh, I never learned that when I was young. You know. I too Christian for that. Malo only for kahiko stuff. If you do kahiko stuff, I'm not going to be Christian enough. I'm not going to be Hawaiian enough. Those were kind of things that, probably came across me when I went on this journey long time ago. I was fortunate to be raised in a family, especially my mom's side of the Ohana, which was very, very into Hawaiian things. And my granduncle was, he was born and raised in Kipahulu, a place called Kalahale, Wailamoa, Kipahulu. He was a manaleo. And very dark, big guy. But I share with you because he was probably like in the 40s or 50s. He was one of the kings for the Aloha Parade. And there's a picture of him, a black and white picture of him standing in one malo, one mahiole on cape. But yeah, that's Aloha Week, that's pageantry, but at that time, that was a source of inspiration and mana for our people, of a connection to our past. That we were a people and a Lā Hoʻihoʻi, an independent nation recognized by a family of nations throughout the world, of glorious kings and famous queens. And so we came from a very noble nation of kupuna. And that's what I saw in that picture of my granduncle, what he represented. And I wanted that feeling. Because he was majestic, he was stoic, he was regal, and he exuded mana, just of how he looked. Like Kukona, my first malo was at Kamehameha Schools my senior year. I was one of 3 pukane, the conchil blows. But that was when they had elastic malo and you put them on in the back. So that was identity, because, a part of the Aloha Week court, So, but I would probably have to say, the experience that really catapulted me into Hawaiian things in 1991, Kiha, the dragon from Maui, Sam Ka'ai, and the great tohunga of Uhi, Keone Nunes from Waianae. They came to UH that year to kahea to all of the brave souls and sons of Hawaii. If you were courageous enough to be koa or not koa, you should be at the Mound of the Whale for the Pu'ukoala ceremonies in August of 1991. And if you were not there, you could not claim to be a nakoa, the courageous. So I was one of those who sat in the bleachers at the UH campus and was like, wow, I like be that. I like be courageous. And so I beckoned the call and spent 4 days there. And I was designated to the ohua of the ali'i, Maluo, who was from Kauai, and his ancestors was part of the ali'i lineage there. And I wore a white malo because I was part of the ohua, but they had other Kāne there. Nakane Lua, Kaio Nakane Lua was there, Momula, Parley Kanakaole was the kahuna nui, Kumu Lake was the kahuna, and many others. And you had 40 nakoa in La'i, the Cape, and the Pololu, and everybody else. They had over probably 2,000 people. You had dignitaries from Tahiti, Aotearoa, different royal families from our Lā Hoʻihoʻi there in present. And it was of a ceremony. I remember this distinct moment, because at that time I knew how to tie a malo, but didn't really understand the significance in ceremony. And like Ka'awai, he said, like, you know, when you go into battle, there's a mental part that prepares you. Just like Oihana Uhi, you know, how you prepare your tools, your ink, how you do your pules before you do your ritual. In a way, a malo is a very reverent ritual when you go into ceremony. And there was a point where, you know, there was other Nakua around, and then there was the Samoan delegation, and they were all given the malo. And the gentleman at that time was the American Samoa delegate to the U.S. Congress, Eni Falio Mwenga, and the other Samoan. And so they were looking at us Hawaiians putting on the malo, and they was trying to, you know, and none of the Hawaiians wanted to tell our cousins, our older cousins, how to put on the malo. So I went over to him and I said, Uncle, go like this. You put them up here, lay on down. And then had three other his guards there. Put them down. You have to hammer your shots, hammer your shots. And the reason why I say that, because the malo is a symbolism of decolonizing your mind, because we've been so imposed of being ashamed of our nudity, our nakedness. But actually, that's who we are. We of the land and our people. So we decolonize our mind, and by taking off our clothes, in a way, is a self-expression of self-determination, of self-identity, and a rebirth of reinstilling mana in ourselves. And then our mind changed, you know. And I saw that in him. It was kind of like, for him, was just like, oh, this is something that, you know, they're not ma'a with. So, you know, we the younger brothers sharing with them, no, this is how you do them. You tie them. Tie them tight. Tie them tight. Because that's how I was, tie them tight, you know. And then do them. And for me, that experience thereafter catapulted me into many other things Hawaiian as Kanaka. It's almost like we live in the shadow of darkness, and sometimes we live in na'aupo, and sometimes na'aupo ke kumu no ka ino o ka ko. Sometimes ignorance is that sort of oppression of our mind and our freedom. Ka mea nui no ka na'auau i ka ea o ka lama kukui, o ka mana lahu I kanaka, ko manao. It is that enlightenment of when we know we want kanaka, and what is a kanaka, what is a Hawaiian, what makes a Hawaiian, what we do. And we don't have to do all the same things as Kāne. But when, like Ka'awai say, when we find what our kuleana is, and then just do them. No need go on social media, TikTok, you know, just go do them. Because then, once you know who you are and what path you're going, then you truly one model, one example of our kupuna, you know, and that path. And so to me, that's my experiences on malo. And I just wanted to share is that, you know, when Imai was sharing and the brother was talking about, you know, seeing a photo of Imai and his son, and you know, that was a really good example of a Hawaiian father instilling mana and knowledge into his son by donning a malo. That ritual is the kaimua ceremony, and it's a rite of passage. It's a rite of passage where the child, the young boy who's a lewa, he's removed from his mother and he's emptied him and thrust into the men's house as a rite of passage, but begins his life cycle as a young man, a young boy who's going to go into manhood. And the responsibility of the Kāne, who are representatives of Lono. And the malo is a symbolism of his basic duty to mahi, is to farm, to provide for the ohana, you know, through the whole Ipua Lono ceremony. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to have done several of those in our community for different ohana and young boys, and see what that makes a difference. And the reason why I share that, because some of us who later in life, we don't have the opio and the hanauna these days. They have greater opportunity to be enlightened now. They'd have to wait later. So to me, that's the kuleana we all carry for our lahui, so that we can rise up again for our people, our lahui. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui ke na mau manao. Mahalo nui ke na mau manao. Ai, Ea I ke kanaka. Hume ka malo. Nani ke na. So, nalila ua manao maua o Kawika nei ano noi aku I ke kahi o nā hoa I kipa mai ke ahi hoi ke mai ke kahi mu manao. Nalila kahe ana wau I ka inoa kuu hoa ia ka leihua hoi ke mai ke kahi mu manao. Pili ana I ka hume malo mai ke kahi ao ka lumi. No ke kahi ao ka mokupuni. Ua humea ka malo ki ahi ke lei nei ka ai nani oe e aho no e hoi ke mai ko mo manao. Ai ka ipu leo mao hiki ke neho ne e mai ina. Mea. I ole mai kai ke lo. Mahalo nui.
Au hea oko I na Kāne I mea. Ulu mai ke ahi. Leo ekonomi a mako no pu mai. Nui lo ke loa. Ka poe na nami ana. Hume ia ka malo no ka mea mana o wau. Pehe no ho mai ka wala o ana no ka malo ali hume ia. Ai hume ia. No lila. O ka mea ole no. Like loa, mino akana wau malalo me kou pale waha. I ka olelo kakaku me ni. Ano ko mea, I loko ka kamanao I hoi ige me ni akaku. He haawina nui no kela ao o ke kumu o ka hume ole ana. No ko mea, makanino ana me iau, no ke hawau hume ai. Ai ka haina o kela ninau I loko o ka pane ana ka ninau no ke aha e hume ole ai. No ke nā au hila au I hoi ki mini. Aka mai ho mau wau maka olelo haole no ka maupuvulu au ko ka leulehu. A lot of what I have to, sitting here is funny because you talking and it's like, there it is, the tapi my son. Yeah, look, listen. Going up on it, right on. I even got to talk as they ditto. But, Yeah. But I think it's about being able to set the ka'ina, the order, the hierarchy of how we regain our own personal sovereignty, the individual aspect of it. Because if we cannot get over how white my butt is or how fat my stomach is, how are we going to learn our language? How are we going to dedicate our lives to our boys and our daughters and reinvigorate the family, to reconnect all of the broken chains that we experience? How are we going to jump into practices that, you bring up kakauhi, how are you going to jump into practices that we have to rediscover some of the components of it? And it just comes with the territory, And so there are much more difficult things that we have to embark on as a people and as individuals. And I can share with you folks, and it's kind of a Malo story, but it's kind of a Uhi story. And I talking, it's funny because I'm sitting behind my son, but I always hold him to this higher regard because what his eyes see and value as normal is different than me. What I see is always contemplation, systemic cultural binary. I see the line and I got a key NNA on both sides and figure out, how to maneuver. I don't think he sees the line like I see the line. And the Malo's been a part of it. Luckily I was able to hume before he can remember. So the line is blurred for him. And then you create this realistic, I'm gonna call it a pseudo view of life, and you jump into, for me, I'm gonna tell you as a father, I jump into almost, it's not a hanakiaka for me, it's not acting, but I gotta show him I'm a novice at something, but he gotta think I'm a loea. He gotta value and view me like I get him. And so you gotta show up every time, and this is about showing up like you get him. If you cannot do this, get them. Because get a whole bunch of other things harder, a lot more left in our culture to hu'e. But the one experience, because I was thinking about this at the time, when I turned 40 and tattooed my mouth, and Kione always talks about being, that kakau is like jumping on a canoe. There's not too many places where you can experience exactly what the kupuna would experience. That's what he said. And I always used to mull over that manao. I think, I think maybe can. Makaolelo Hawai'i ana manao wau pelai hola no na kupuna nui na vahi. Akaoia ke kahi vahi. That's just one place where you can feel it. But that morning of preparing to tattoo over my mouth was one of those mornings where the malo is your ko'olua. The malo is your security, because you're jumping into something that is going to bring you into a place of challenging your own survivability. But I think sitting in that space and moving into a level of pain and a level of consciousness and a level of contemplation, as you go through that, I was reflecting on my malo, and in the space of who was in malo, who wasn't in malo, and the contemplation of the type of ceremonies that we run. Because I was going to ask you guys one question that comes from this experience is, where do we go? Where do we go from here? What's the future? When it comes to hume, is the goal that we hume all the time? Is the goal that we have multiple malo, to accommodate our ceremony, but something that we embody our kupuna every day. Because I think that's the difficult space, I think, is to create an understanding that part of the individual sovereignty is committing to ho'opili kupuna. And that's a hard one, you know, because I think we always ho'olele and juggle and weigh, you know, how much of our kupuna do we want to really emulate. And for me personally, why this isn't a problem anymore and why this isn't a problem is because when you learn more about them, and you understand the entirety of who they constructed, how they constructed themselves, and the individuals that situate within the societal constructs and beliefs of our antiquity, we all understand that we are just like our mo'olelo are just like the mo'olelo from Greece and Rome. Our gods are just as powerful and come with beautiful stories, just like those things that we call classics in today's society. And so I think for me, to answer the question, because I always mull over it as I stand here now, is that the future is to go back to a place in our minds, in our hearts, in our souls, and potentially in our societal constructs where we embrace again the views of our ancestors realistically, because the society that they built wasn't perfect, but we never killed a land, we never killed species, we never imagined currency was aloha and mahalo. And I don't mean to get too far off the subject matter, but malo, when you strap on a malo, you go back to a better time in your spirit. And so, for me, that's the goal, is that the more he can hume his malo, the better a psychological, spiritual, emotional life he'll have for himself and my grandchildren. ʻŌihoʻo ka umumole kalme. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui. So we are just about at the end of our evening, and really want to mahalo all of the Kāne that were able to share, as well as those who were here to bear witness and to take in this mana'o, and to add your own mana just by your presence. You know, we have a small group of Kāne here, but even then these stories can keep on going on and on. But mahalo for being here, and especially to our kupuna who are sharing, Emmett, Umi, Kukona, and Ka'owai. You know, there's so much you've given us that we can take in. And as Kalehua was saying, as we reflect on the malo, and as those malo become reflections of us, you know, there's that growth in that ea, in that life, that breath, the rising, that sovereignty, that Lā Hoʻihoʻi Ea is. We hume that malo, ho'okala i ka ihe, strap on that malo, sharpen the spear, and prepare for the battles as we continue to reclaim that ea in these everyday acts of ea through the hume, through the hoa of the malo. Mahalo to Waiwai, ʻŌiwi TV, Makavalu Films. Again, we are sending this kahea out to the Lāhui and especially our Kāne. If you've been inspired by anything, please send a short 2-minute video clip telling your malo story, whatever it is. makavalufilms@gmail.com is the place. Kekama is the person who you want to address it to. Again, I think that's it for me. And Imai, you want to have the last word?
Once again, I want to echo the sentiment of mahalo of appreciation. The life, the breath, the sovereignty of our people rests on our shoulders. So as one thread in the tapestry of our Lā Hoʻihoʻi, the tapestry of how we achieve liberation, freedom, conscientization, is as closely tied with our individual acts of sovereignty, our individual acts of ʻea. And we can reclaim those every day. I'm inspired by the stories. I'm inspired by the different uses. We all sit here as, I think, Kāne who have been associated with ceremony, and we know that great reverence is associated with this. And I believe that Mauna Kea also has reflected that reverence in us all as well too. Just as the Mauna is sacred, so are we sacred. And an attack on the Mauna is an attack against us. So to counter, to turn that direction against us and throw it at those who oppress us, we hope that today's discussion, this evening's discussion, has brought a deeper sense of understanding of the relevance and the reverence of our responsibility. And ʻea literally fills our bodies. ʻea fills our actions. ʻea fills our minds, our thoughts, our philosophies, our theories, the way we frame, the way that we take action, the way that we avoid, we disengage, the way that we unravel, we reflex, the way that we unlearn the colonialism, the way that we unlearn a lot of the toxic behaviors that have really stifled us as Kanaka. So I want to say mahalo again to Waiwai for bringing that tanoa so that we can stir the bitter waters in order to raise our people up, in order to deepen our level of understanding, to take us from the po into the ao. And I encourage you all, Kāne out there, to reflect deeply in yourself, to recognize your ʻea, to recognize your sacredness as well. Hume kamalo ai kai, hopu kalima I kala'au. We have a lot of work to do. So on behalf of Lā Hoʻihoʻi Ea, Hawaiian Liberation Celebration, we hope that you continue to dialogue, you continue to have those discussions with your keiki, your sons. And we hope that if this event has done anything, it has brought us greater focus, it has brought us greater reflection, and it has brought us greater responsibility on the path that we choose for together. On behalf of Lā Hoʻihoʻi Ea, on behalf of all of those who are joining in this program, I want to send a sincere mahalo to our guest speakers, our panelists, to all of the ike waiwai that I'm very interested to drink from as well. And again, wahia kupuna wahia ke ali ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono ke ia wā e maulo aku e mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono e mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono no kako ke kule ana. Mahalo iau ko pakahia pau no ke ea hui ana mai. Mahalo e na hoa like ole. Mahalo e na akua, na kupuna ke ia wahine e noho ai. No laila he wahi o leo ia o ko pakahi no hoi. Mahalo. Thank you for joining us. Good night.